Welcome out, everyone. All of you great decoders around the world, wherever you may be. My name is Logan, and this, of course, is Decode Your Reality. And today we're going to be talking about a very special topic that's close to my heart anyway. And I have my very special guest coming all the way from the northern part of the world in the Arctic Circle, all the way up. Probably you can't really get any farther than where she lives at. All the way from Norway and the tips of Norway, my friend Ola Wolny, and she is from Poland. So all of you Polish fans out there, rejoice. Lived in London for some time, and we got connected from Sam. So a big shout out to Sam and Rise Above podcast, him kind of connecting us together. And we didn't even know what was going to happen, but here we are joining forces doing a podcast. And so this is very special because we wouldn't have agreed to do a podcast if we didn't have a very like mindset. So Ola, welcome out to Decode Your Reality. It's great to have you part of this decoding family. I really have taken a deep yearning for what you're doing and the way you're kind of going about your decoding methods. And you're a astrologer by trade, right? I mean, that's kind of your claim to fame, so to speak. I know you have degrees and all that stuff, and I'll let you get into all that stuff. But what I want people to realize here is that Ola is very, very good at Babylonian astrology. We're not going to be really talking about Western too much, tropical today. We're going to be diving into the Vedic sidereal, but Ola will explain it more, the Babylonian astrology, and why she uses that one, why she favors that one. And today's topic is going to be exit the matrix. Ooh, exit the matrix. That's today's topic. We're going to be jumping all around, but Ola, welcome out. It's so nice to have you here on this podcast. And it's been great chatting with you, right? We've had hours now already chatting away, but welcome out. And why Babylonian astrology, and how does that correlate to exiting the matrix?
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me, and welcome to you, welcome to everybody. It's an honor being here. It is definitely for me a massive step in the right direction to be able to speak
Tigris
with
already,
you.
huh? So if you hear the cat in the background, it's just our beautiful cat Tigris, and he's already. It's so funny you called it.
Promise.
You said he's gonna start meowing. There he is. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. So for me, this is absolutely a perfect place to show up, to be interviewed, because we obviously are doing the same thing. The goal is the same. We are approaching it pretty much from the same angle. As it happens, I go mostly by the sidereal astrology. So we have the Vedic and the Babylonian astrology. I, just like you go at the topic from sort of variety of angles, and I do that from astrology side, from Chaldean numerology, because absolutely I believe that the way to get to the bottom of things here is by using different modalities, because this is how everything has been coded. Why Babylonian astrology? Well, because I think that over the last 2.5 years, I don't really want to use too much on this topic so that you don't get troubles with the YouTube algorithms, with the video being taken down. But the last 2.5 years can be very, very nicely traced and understood in terms of what's been happening, what the matrix served us at first with the disease, so-called, and later we entered the time of conflicts and wars in the world. So all that is perfectly traced via the Babylonian astrology. This is to do with the cycles of Mars specifically, and so-called heliacal rising of Mars, which happened in late 2019, in end of October 2019, heliacal rise of Mars in Virgo. And that's, Virgo, yourself, the association with health, diseases, crisis, discipline, our sort of routines changing, right? And this is what happens. So Mars has 2 year cycle. I don't really want to go sort of too much technical into it. However, it has a 2 year cycle. So it set the tone around that time, right? And this is the beginning of the 2 years of lockdowns and etc., to do with the disease. This is what Mars brought in Virgo. And then the next time Mars, heliacal rising of Mars, happened in the sign of Scorpio. Exactly in the 8th degree, which is very interesting place because of the sort of esoteric meaning of that. However, Mars in Scorpio, that's war, that's conflict, right?
Yeah. So what Mars is right around the basic fundamentals. So people paying attention to this without looking at the charts. When did Mars move into Scorpio? Right around the time frame. Do you know? Remember offhand?
It's not so much in terms of the transits in Babylonian astrology that we're talking about. We're talking about the heliacal phases, which is basically to do with the first appearance of Mars after the period of invisibility. So this is what starts the cycle. It's a 2 year cycle. And in 2019, end of October, 29th of October, we had the heliacal rise in Virgo, which set the tone for the disease, popular disease, and the lockdowns. And of course, we were sent home to be working from home. So the routines changed. So you see, this is how it played out. So they picked that energy very specifically. It was not an accident. So they basically harvested the fact that this energy would have had an impact onto the world in a way that it sells the idea, right? I mean, many people bought into that. Of course, there were those that woke up in that time, but a lot of people just bought into the idea that was perfectly marketed and sold along with the energy supporting it. Yeah. And then the same thing was repeated in December last year. So that was the new cycle of Mars rising in Scorpio, setting the tone for the next sort of 20 months, more or less, until it goes into the invisibility again. And Mars in Scorpio, yourself, is to do with conflicts, wars, etc. And so we had the conflict in Ukraine, or so it was advertised.
Yeah. So this is all a matter of how, like, you really got invested in this kind of stuff, and then you're a fan of the Babylonian. So let's move it. So this is the nucleus now. So the Babylonian astrology, I want to just really quickly, why that over the Western tropical? Why do you favor the Babylonian?
Well, first of all, like I say, you can trace it back to the exact steps taken by the matrix, by the elites, however you want to refer to them, in the last 2.5 years. So something happened that specifically this zodiac, this astrology has been utilized and followed, and this is the energy that they have been working with. Babylonian astrology comes from the area of Sumeria and the Babylon, so the ancient times. It goes back even to the Chaldean times. So this is where I would say, the start of this civilization, or the start of what we have here in terms of power, in terms of how the world is being governed. I mean, it's, we don't have local governments, do we? We have City of London, we have the Vatican, and in America we have the Washington DC, which are really the three kind of centers. And this is the new Babylon. So the old Babylon never fell. It just continued.
Yeah, they just revived it. Yeah, I mean, and there's obelisks in all three cities.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah, and the latitude, longitudes, as I have shown, are but when you connect all three, is just ridiculous. It's kind of like the divine triangle. So we're talking with Ola, the Babylonian astrologer, all the way from the Nordic Circle. And Ola, so I'm a huge fan of the Vedic. I'm and Babylonian, we're going to call it here, but I like it because of the nakshatras and, the micromanagers of the zodiac, if you will. But how do we flip this into like exiting? Because the topic is exiting the matrix. So we now have this nucleus of why you are a fan and utilize this Babylonian astrology system. But how do, like, because people are interested, a lot of people I know in my community, they don't want to come back to this reality. Maybe because they have a shitty code or shitty script, but like, nonetheless, there are people that they don't want to come back and redo this life again if there is such a choice. So this is about exiting the matrix. And I know this is very abstract, but what can you kind of dump out onto the listeners right now on this topic of exiting the matrix? What would you say at this point? I mean,
well, I think that it's worth taking a step back to explain how I see that, or where am I coming from to even come up with some kind of idea about that. You see, I've spent quite a long time studying the ancient texts, the Vedas, the Gnostic texts, Babylonian texts, so the Enuma Elish, which is the creation myth, the Bible. So different geographies, different texts, and the message is pretty much similar. When you look at the cosmology across different geographies, across different cultures, whether that be the Mayas, the Incas, the Vikings, Egypt, Babylon, the India, etc., the cosmology is actually very, very similar. So the way the world is being interpreted or shown is pretty much similar. I mean, this is really where we derive the flat earth idea from, right? Because we are dealing here with the picture of an earth over which we have a firmament. And pretty much all those cultures, they place something more above that firmament, whether that be the zodiac or some kind of gods, some kind of pictures of something that some of it probably have not yet worked out what that is. However, it is pretty clear that there is a message that seems to be coming from these cultures from the past and all the way across the history. But is it all that they are trying to say, that there's a sky above us? I don't think so. So you see, when you go a little bit deeper and especially look through the concept of astrology, why is it that we are able to predict some things? Do we have a free will? It seems that what we actually have above us is some kind of construct, a very advanced construct. I would go as far as say some kind of artificial intelligence blend with probably something biological, which is being in a way imposed and screened from some kind of higher dimension or just another level, and that is impacting us. And here we are on this plane, whether that be round or flat, doesn't really matter, but we are being impacted. I would say that the chakras, the chakra centers, as you know, they are connected. Each of the chakra centers is corresponding to a planet. So are we the receivers of the cosmic energy? Are we, through the chakras, being directly linked to the zodiac up in the sky, to some kind of technology that is communicating and steering certain reactions or perhaps certain events, etc., in order to probably harvest energy from us? So this is how I see it. I don't necessarily think that the whole thing is just a simulation, that we are living. I think that you tend to go more down the route of this being a simulation, just a movie. I think that there's an element of sort of, let's call it a bio structure, over which there is this AI layer imposed, whether that be some very, very advanced technology that probably we have absolutely no understanding of from here, from this level.
Yeah.
So this is how I see it. And of course, to me, astrology, numerology, these are the ways to decipher what has happened down here.
Yeah.
How is this being played out? So the way I see it, including what's been coming from the ancient texts, is that there is a reincarnation machine. So basically, this is like a closed system of recycling.
Right.
Once you're here, if you don't know how to get out of here, if you don't have that consciousness and that information, that knowledge at the level while you're here, then when you die, you're not going to be able to find that. So you're just going to land basically back on the reincarnation cycle, on the loop. You're going to come back.
Yep. It's interesting because, the conversations that you and I have had off screen, and you being way up in the Arctic Circle, and your whole story about how you got there and why you're there, and then just the photographs you sent, and just the visions of what it looks like up there. So I mean, we're talking, if you just look at the Arctic Circle, the Arctic Circle up in Norway, like those areas up there, like the farthest north you can get, that's where Ola's at. And when you look at the landscape, it's absolutely breathtaking. And there are these, what appear to be mountains. You think they're cut down trees. And this kind of correlates into, perhaps, as if those of you that follow Jason Bashir's from Archaics, the canopy being higher than what it once was. And you talked about that, Ola, right? Like before this reality is taking place, there was something going on that was obviously much different. And so you think that the mountains where you're at were actually trees cut down. There are a lot of people that think that as well, but you think that maybe that plays into the giants and the taller people and this kind of stuff, right? Different kind of terrain.
Yeah. Definitely. Specifically, there is an area just around the corner from me called Lofoten. So these are islands, absolutely breathtaking. And you literally, when you leave the continent, so when you leave continental Norway and sort of enter Lofoten, because these are islands, it's as if you traveled across dimensions. It's just a different world. The landscapes are totally different. They are absolutely amazing, spectacular. And like you say, why do I think these are cut down trees? Well, because this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. Literally, the structure, the shapes of these mountains are nothing normal to what normally mountains should look like. And obviously, if we follow some of the other stories about potentially trees around the world that were cut down, right? These are the petrified trees, the mineralized into in a process in the past. Definitely something like that is also here in this area.
Yeah.
On top of that, So what are we dealing with here? Well, we had a chat yesterday, right? That if you look at any of those past cultures, their mythology and the stories that they were conveying, there's always an idea of some kind of firmament. So where are we actually living? Are we living in some kind of biological capsule? Are we living literally under something which is also probably messing with the pressure, meaning pressure down here being higher, therefore we are not able to grow more than we are. However, perhaps outside of this capsule, conditions are different, and perhaps these trees or remnants of trees are basically what is outside of the capsule of some kind of world, some kind of reality that exists right now, outside perhaps right now or perhaps in the past, outside of the capsule. Who knows?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the capsule, because like I think it's a cosmic egg. I think that we live, and it's very possible that we actually, Earth is underwater. And that's why you're going to get, what appears to be space, and it's dark and the water's above, right? And so if we are actually inside of a self-contained system, and really there's maybe a way out by way of figuring out how this game works, which is we're going to be diving into a little bit more during this podcast. it seems very plausible, all these things that we're talking about here, like, maybe the egg was bigger, it was taller, the vapor canopy, as Jason Bashir alludes to from Archaics, it was different back then. And I can see that and I just they found bones of, a lot larger human beings. So it would make sense that you'd have these taller people, and then these mountains that you're experiencing are really just tree stumps. And there are, a lot of people in Arizona and the United States and Las Vegas or the areas outside Sedona and some of these areas. Utah is another area where it looks like there's trees that are cut down, there's stumps. And if that's the case, that's kind of a big game changer if we can absolutely label that as fact, right? And again, that's just hypothetical, but if we did say that it was a fact that we are now squished down in this self-contained system and we're now small. And I just think it's interesting because we're downsizing. There's a movie that came out with Matt Damon called Downsizing. We've gone from giants and now it's just scrunching us down. What's the next level to this game? Well, I mean, it appears that quantum is the next realm. What does quantum mean? Well, it appears that quantum would correlate to human beings becoming much smaller than we are right now. And we have a lot of room to do that. So these are all theoretical, but very plausible to think about. So Ola, what do you think some of the requirements to exit this game? And obviously you don't need to be a practitioner of astrology or numerology. No. You could just follow someone's coattails like yourself that is here, because I think you incarnated to be a messenger. I think that you incarnated to be a tour guide like myself. That's why you and I have a lot of resonation together. But what are some of the requirements, the requisites to exit this matrix, if there is such a thing? What would you say as some of the basic fundamentals?
Well, I think that a lot of those messages are not even coded. They are blatantly, openly spoken about in the ancient texts, and specifically in Hermetica. So in the Hermetic text, in the Gnostic text, they all talk about ignorance, right? Ignorance being the issue. So ignorance floods the world. What is the ignorance? Well, I would say that the ignorance is what we currently in the current sort of climate we call the sleep, right? The people who are asleep. So people who absolutely have no idea, and the consciousness is still in that kind of caught into the matrix cycle of this sort of hamster wheel, and not being interested in anything higher than just getting up, going to work and coming back and just sleeping, eating, living, and that's it. That's all it is. So I think that what it really takes is, to begin with, is that kind of awakening when you are still alive. So you need to first get to a point of knowing that there is something else, realizing that we are living in some kind of structure, that there is this reincarnation cycle, and start your journey from here. I mean, that is the prerequisite. I mean, otherwise it's Mary Magdalene, she says that if you do not resurrect by life after death, it's impossible. Forget it. It's not gonna happen. And the same is written in Hermetic texts, that if you do not sort of feel that enlightenment or go through that enlightenment in life, during life, after death, it's not going to happen. It's not going to, the switch is not going to flip just because you are dead. So apparently there seems to be some kind of way to die, or at least some kind of something to do after death, which you need to be aware of. What to do, how to navigate once you cross over. Where do you cross over to?
Yeah, these are like theoretical, right? But we have to start somewhere. We have to start kind of looking at a lot of these layers, and you being an astrologer and looking at how the machinations of those things work, these systems work. So what are your conclusions here? Like the basic ones, right? So if there are some prerequisites, what do you think someone has to do to check? I go off like, you got to check this off the list and check that off the list. What would you say some of those things are to exit the matrix?
Well, you see, I think that people quite often don't realize that there is a lot of parallels between the ancient text and astrology. So these are not separate from each other. There's a lot of messages coded there. And for example, even as just looking into the Bible or the Gnostic text, because obviously there's a lot of wisdom that has been taken and removed from the Bible that is still in the Gnostic text. So when we look at Jesus, right? I mean, whether he was real or not, irrelevant. There's a message here, there's a story here. And the story is that he dies on a cross. He's taken first, he's taken off the cross, he's taken to the grave, to the cave.
Yeah.
To the cave. And after 3 days in a cave, he comes back, and only then, after that, he is able to ascend. So what's the message? The message is, and we need to look at it in a sort of allegory terms.
Absolutely.
That the first trip is down, is into the earth, is down into the grave, into the earth, and afterwards he comes back and he goes up. But what are the Catholics and all the others told? That when you die, you go straight to heaven, right? So quite often people see this tunnel, white tunnel, and go straight up, don't go anywhere else, just go straight up. But that's actually not what Jesus did. And a parallel to that is drawn in the cycles of Venus. I don't really want to go very technical here, but in Babylonian astrology, you look at the phases of Venus, and we say that when Venus gets closer to the sun, she's dying. She's becoming invisible in the rays of the sun to a point where she's dead, and then she's reborn again. That's a parallel to really the Jesus story. And what happens, that story in itself from astrology is linked to a myth of Inanna descent to the underworld. Here we are again in the underworld. So the way out before you ascend seems to be first down. And if you look at, for example, the Norse mythology, so the Vikings, the tree of life, right? And the world in which we live in is actually the middle world. We are in the middle. So there's still roots below us, right, and there are branches above us.
Yeah.
So there is clearly a way down, not just up. And I think from what I have established, to synthesize what I'm saying, from what I've established based on astrology, based on the Gnostic texts, and I know it's a bit controversial, including the Kabbalah and the tree of life in Kabbalah, you have the Yggdrasil, which is the Norse mythology, the tree of life as well. The way out of here is not to go to the light and up, but actually go down the tree of life and exit through the tree of life.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, in my world, this is a big topic that a lot of people are mentioning is don't go to the light, don't go to the light. That's and I'm like, okay, so, my brain is like, okay, where did this concept come from? Where did this idea of, because no one's died and decided that, oh, there's the light and then there's the dark, I'm not going to go to the light, and then be able to come back and reincarnate and tell you, don't go to the light. So where did this idea come from, right? Of don't go into the light? Because there's a lot of regurgitation. A lot of people just regurgitating that, which is fine. Not saying it's wrong, but there's a lot of people just saying, oh, that sounds good. Yeah, that sounds good. I'm not going to go to the light because the light is the trap, right?
Right.
It's been so Jesusified, if you will, right? It's been Jesus is more the light, like I'm a light worker, and so then you put this context of don't go to the light. Well, then you don't go towards the Christ, So it's just really interesting how you talk about the underworld, and if we have a choice to exit the matrix upon death, when you die from this physical reality, then, are you given that choice of the dark hole or the light hole? Which one are you going to go towards? The light at the end of the tunnel? Are you going to, and that's obviously, where most people are prone to do that. Like if you're in a dark room and you see some light, way off in the distance, it draws your curiosity.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Not to turn around and there's darkness behind you. It's the light that draws your curiosity. So
Right.
is that the default to suck you back into the reincarnation process?
I definitely would say so, that it is the default, and it's also the programming that we receive, because if you attended the church, then you are told that you need to go up, right? You need to go to heaven. You don't go to hell. Nobody wants to go to hell. I mean, you see how we are programmed. Forget the down, go up. It's the heaven, not the hell, right? So it is the up. In the Hermetic text, Codex Hermeticum, Hermes Trismegistus specifically talks about the fact that unless you awaken or unless you shed the ignorance, you will be sent on the reincarnation wheel. You will be tossed. It is specifically called, you will be tossed between heaven and earth in the reincarnation loop.
Yeah.
So he's the one talking about that. He's the one saying that if you go up, you basically go under the firmament, right? You go into the zodiac and you get returned back here. So that's where it comes from. That's what this whole story comes from, of going to the light and then being caught into the loop. It is on top of that, he talks about some kind of life review, or some kind of a board meeting you there and discussing with you how you did in this life. So basically some kind of life review, which is also something that we are taught from the Bible, right? Through the Christian and the Catholic, for example, teachings. So all that makes sense, that this is the basis of it, right? So this is, I think, why people feel, well, I'm not gonna go there. However, when you flip it, and on the other hand, when you are born, where are you born from?
Yeah, you're born from the darkness, and you come into
You're born from the darkness.
I was just gonna, you're instantly programmed to think, oh, there's the light, I'm free. But then, of course, what does a baby typically do when it comes into? It starts to cry, right? Because it's instantly embedded with fear, which is why the crying starts.
But you see, that portal, let's say, which is to do with entering this reality from some other reality, is not some kind of light tunnel. It's a darkness, right? It's a black hole. Let's call it like that. So if this is the way in, could it be also the way out?
Yeah.
Obviously,
reverse engineering.
You're not going to be able exactly to do it exactly the same way. But if we sort of understand the meaning of the parallel here, is that the way out?
Yeah.
And I am absolutely compelled to say yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I've been saying this for a while now, with observing the whole birth canal and doing decodes on it. And, there's no light inside the womb, ladies and gentlemen. It's just completely dark. The seed typically seeds, not everything, but typically a seed is put into the soil, which is no light, and then it draws the nutrients, and then out pops, and then the seed goes towards the light. So obviously that whole thing has merit to it. But can we flip that story? Because we're talking about exiting the matrix. A lot of you don't want to come back. And if this is a game, we got to figure it out, right? And maybe the free will that we might have, I'm not saying we do or don't, but the free will that we might have is absolutely doing what we're doing right here today, figuring this out to exit the matrix. And I think a lot of people have interest in this topic. A lot of people are really curious about this. And I postulated this question on many of my podcasts. I'm like, let's be realistic here. We are into what they say the dark age. We're in the end stage of the Yuga. Okay. And it can get pretty horrific. I mean, I live in paradise. I don't see any of the nightmare stuff, but I can't imagine being born into a scenario, into a code, into a script that's really shitty, like some of these people in really war-torn cities. And, and just why did they get that script? Why did you get your script? Why are you up in, obviously a very beautiful place, and, you're enjoying life. Not everybody has that, right? So we postulate these, and then okay, what's the next stage of my evolution as a human being? Because there has to be something more than just coming here and humping and making babies and having a pet and going into the ocean and swimming and having dinner and cupcakes and pizza and enjoying life, right? There has to be something more to the story than meets the eye. And I think at this stage of the game for people, especially in my community, they are curious to know if they have an option to perhaps leave this game. And here we're talking about exit the major. And this is a hot topic.
Yeah, and I totally understand why it is a hot topic. I would also flip it a little bit more and, ask or probe a little bit in a one more direction, which is, yes, it is the end of Yuga. The next one is the golden age. So this is a quantum leap, right? I mean, this is not some kind of step-by-step approach. We're talking about the total quantum leap. So where are we right now? What is happening? Who are we? Who are you? Who am I? And who are the people who are listening to this podcast? Because of course that, all of us come from families, or we have friends who will never listen to these kind of things. They are deep into the matrix. And so we definitely have at least two types of souls, groups of people right now present here. So my question to you, are we all the same? Did you or I or the people who are listening right now, are we definitely from the reincarnation cycle? Are we here from the reincarnation loop, or have we come through from the outside, perhaps to facilitate this quantum leap between those two eras? And that's why it is natural for us to be looking, where's the parachute, right? When I'm done, I need to be out of here. I'm not staying here, right? I'm just gonna do my job and I'm out. So this is natural topic for you and I to be looking into, and for everybody else to need to know how to get out of here once you're done.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting that you mentioned quantum leap, making the quantum. So this goes into this aspect here. So a few weeks ago, when I was on the Syncretism Society and with my friend Santos, we had this guest on. His name was Roberto. What a really intelligent guy. He was all about the Toltec wisdom, right? So we get into some Mayan stuff, and he did this great presentation. And the big nugget I got from him was that he said that we're in their traditions, you're moving from the physical avatar of the human being experience, you're moving into a crystalline state, and you're moving into silicon.
Right.
Now, my research has shown that silicon, it represents the future. And then you get silicon chips and computers and all that technology. So you mentioned quantum leap, and that rung up. So are we just going to go smaller? Or is going to a higher density? As Roberto says, when you go to a higher frequency, you shed this physical body. You can't. It would mean that you would end your life in this 3-density reality to go to a quantum leap. And quantum is now talked about in the quantum financial system, which is cryptocurrency. So are we to just, leave that out? And say, because I know a lot of people think, well, crypto means death and the crypt, and but maybe that's where we're headed. Maybe to level up in this game, to exit the matrix, ladies and gentlemen, it requires obviously checking off the list a lot of things, but it means to get rid of this physical. Would you be willing to do that as a human being? If that is one of the requisites, the prerequisites to leave this 3-density reality and move into a higher density, right? Is that one of them? Because this place, I mean, Ola, you live in a one of the most pristine, beautiful places in the world. And you go out there in nature and you look at it, you're like, man, I want to enjoy this. And like, if you were given the choice, like I would postulate the question to all of you watching this right now. If you were given the choice to incarnate into this 3-density reality, but it wasn't the dark age, it was the golden age, would you do it? Like the game gets started over again. All the predators get wiped from the board. All the darkness gets wiped from the board. The cancers and toxicities get wiped from the board. And now you're left with being able to use telekinetic powers, being able to do sound levitations, all these great things that people talk about, rapid healing, there's no sickness and disease. Would you come back and be a human being again? That's the big question. Because, I mean, we're talking about exit the matrix, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Ola? Would you come back if you had the choice to come back as a human being? If these things were happening in the golden age, as we just talked about?
Well, I think that we have to remember that, you know, we obviously have a lot of civilization in the past, the Mayans included, that seem to just have vanished, right? So what happened to them? I mean, did they go extinct? I don't think so, because where are the evidence, right? So they literally vanished. So are we just repeating the same story? So very, very plausible that what you're saying is absolutely what we might be experiencing perhaps in this lifetime. Would I come back? Well, I think that, you know, these are very interesting questions, but something that you probably ponder once you're incarnated, once you're at the avatar level, right? Because if we are coming from a paradigm that we are much more than that, well, then you would have had all sorts of different lives and different experiences in all sorts of different possibilities, right? Whether that be 3D or some kind of more etheric version of yourself. So yeah, why not? Why would you not want to experience that? You know, I think that a lot of people who are probably listening to us are not maybe feeling that connected specifically to the human race, because we are not the avatar, right? We are much more than the avatar. So why would you feel such association with keeping the body? I don't know if it's that important. Not at least not for me.
Yeah, you met, you know, it's interesting because another bomb you just dropped, you know, you talked about the Mayan, right? And so we talked about quantum. Quantum means higher density, which means a higher frequency. And this is a low frequency human being. The physical avatar has to be, is his spirit slowed down into physical matter to become a human being. So the Mayans, if you study that culture, the height of the Mayans are much smaller than the average human being. The average height is around 5'10" to 6 foot. Mayans are not. They're much smaller. They're much shorter than that. We're talking about the mid 5.5 range and shorter, right? So you're now crunching it down. We talked about the giants, and then we get into maybe the, you know, like my friend who's pretty knowledgeable. He had said to me one day, he said, you know, if you want to look at real life Anunnaki, just turn on sports and you'll see them on the TV. The ones that are 6'5", 7 foot, playing the sports, that are gifted athletes, those are the closest to the fallen angels that you'll get, the remnants of them. And they're here to entertain the gods, right? And they're tall. Kind of makes sense, right? And then you get into it, you know, like I'm average height. I'm like 5'11", 5'11 and a half. So I'm like, I'm average height. But then you get into the Mayans, they're shorter, they're smaller. And what, like you said, what happened to their race? They just no remnants left. Did they go quantum? Did they figure out how to exit the matrix? And they checked off all the things on the list, and then whoosh, they vanished, and there's no traces of them, right? Kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that we sort of have two different things going on here, because one thing is to do with literally reaching certain point in evolution or in a civilizational growth where you ascend as a whole civilization, ascend, or however we want to call it, right? Something happens, but probably while you are still alive. But a separate topic is what to do when you die. So let's say that doesn't happen anytime soon, but every single one of us, sooner or later, is going to be exiting. How do we exit? So I think that we probably, it would be good to have a plan for the natural exit, right? Which is what I was suggesting, because whether we will be reaching that quantum leap as we speak sometime soon, I don't know. I don't know, but I suggest we have a parachute for both scenarios, right?
A parachute, I love that. Parachute, paradise, parasite. That word para, kind of interesting. Starts with the letter P, 16th letter, 16th in the chakra. And you have some planets there in the
That's right.
chakra. Yeah. So
That's right.
there's some great synchronicities with you. So as regards to the, the Babylonian versus the Western, we've already established Babylonian being kind of closer to the origin of it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the reason why you favor it is, because people are like, well, I like Western and there's truth in that. And I'm a huge fan of both systems, but let's be realistic here. If Babylonian astrology is closer to the source, then it's like kind of like, which one has more truth? The one that's, closer to the source or one that's farther away? Well, the dark age to me is you're the farthest away from the source. And when you get the farthest away from the source, that's where you have more chaos. The closer you get to the source, you have more order, right? And this is why I feel like, the nakshatras and why Babylonian astrology Vedic is so special. But can we kind of figure out anything based on exiting the matrix with this Babylonian astrology? What do you think on that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, just sort of one step back. Why Babylonian astrology? I don't specifically think that one is better than the other. You see, I use Babylonian, I use Vedic, I use numerology. So I think that just like you, and you're a master in those things, in pulling all sorts of variety of different things. This is the key, because otherwise we just have a puzzle of the whole structure, right? So we need to really sort of pull from as many directions as possible and build a picture together. So it's not that Babylonian astrology is the answer, but certainly from what I have seen over at least the past 2.5 years, and the past 2.5 years were just the most amazing evidence, the elites, or however we call them, they seem to be following specifically this astrology, especially with the last 2.5 years, what they have done and what they are doing right now. This is absolutely written according to that script. And of course, you can put a layer of numerology, etc., and sort of go deeper into those things. But certainly that astrology, the story behind that, absolutely works. I do use Vedic as well. I have pulled out from the tropical zodiac because I'm an engineer by background. I'm an oil and gas engineer from my sort of past life, and I'm not really sold on the fact that it's either Leo or it's Virgo, and it can be both. Well, to me, it cannot be both. It's either one or the other. And the tropical astrology, the tropical zodiac, is linked to a zodiac that was frozen 2,000 years ago. It is not representing the actual position of the stars and the planets in the sky. It is representing something that was actual 2,000 years ago. So I don't follow that, but of course, everybody has their own methods. However, specifically in terms of leaving the matrix, why Babylonian astrology? It's not so much the Babylonian astrology, because this is obviously the part of the code, deciphering the code, as I think it is to do with the planet Venus. Specifically Venus, Pistis Sophia, Venus, the Inanna, and any other feminine energies throughout the history. The mother, the archetype of the mother. Where did we originate from, and how do we get out here? This is back to this, the portal, the birthing canal, right? That kind of portal, and the Venus, specifically the story of Venus, which is the parallel to the story of Inanna, Isis, Ishtar, and every single goddess that was here in the past, before the patriarchy. That is the story talking about going into the so-called underworld. That is not hell. And look how much, by the way, marketing, how much negative marketing has been created around the underworld. It's hell, it's dark, it's
Purgatory,
the dark. Yeah, anything that will keep you away from there.
That's a good point.
Scare you and keep you away from there, and send you the other way, which is the light, the positivity, right? Ascension, heaven. I mean, amazing. Well, is that not a trick? So this is where I'm coming from with the underworld not even being hell in a Bible kind of sense, but being that kind of way into the the tree of life, so that you can go all the way down to the roots. And from what it seems, from based on the symbology in the ancient text, there seems to be a way out of here at the roots of the tree of life.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting you say this, because if you take a simple torus field, which is what the human being is, well, the heart center is kind of like, you know, the midway point, and then because it's kind of formed on magnetism, you have energy coming up this way and wrapping around and coming down into the root, right? So essentially it makes this shape like this, right? To get, and is it possible, correlating it to what your theories are here, that you want to go down, and when you go down through the root, you come back around and dump up into the top, which perhaps may mean the way out? Very plausible to think that.
You see, when you think about, when you think about the tree of life, right? The tree, just the tree. Let's forget the tree of life. Just the tree. Tree is a torus as well.
Yep.
That's a toroidal field, right? I mean, you have the roots at the bottom. You have the crown on top. So that is a toroidal field. So, like, whichever way we look at it, we come to the torus, to the toroidal fields, whether that be through the tree. So here we are at the tree, and yes, perhaps what you're saying is exactly right. Out through the
the roots,
through the roots, so that you can come back up, and because perhaps that is the ascension, the true ascension.
Yep. Because if you go up, if you go towards, like, if you look at a tree again, and it is a toroidal field, if you go towards the branch where the birds are, if you go towards the heavens, that would wrap around. If you look at a true torus field, if you go
send
up,
you back down
and come back up around again. Right. And now you're incarnate, maybe, right? This is theoretical, but it's very plausible to think this and postulate these ideas on perhaps exiting the matrix. You want to go down, and when you go down, you come back up around and you come to the top. And then that's how you get to the top. You don't get to the top by going straight up. You get to the top by going around and upwards. And looking at the force field says it all.
And perhaps, you know, when you go up the tree, right, that's entering the reincarnation cycle, because you get sent back down onto the earth, just back down onto the earth. So this is that kind of loop that sends you, if you go up, you're going to come back down. Into this reality. So in order to give,
you have your anus is the root, and that's Uranus. And Uranus to me is the father sky. It runs everything. That's my opinion. Uranus is, which is why it's the only planet that sits on its axis around 97 degrees, which is the 25th prime number. That's linked to the words black sun in numerology. But Uranus is the flipping of the chakras. So we're told that ascension, you go this way, and that's 33, and you get your chrism raises, and you get crucified in Golgotha and the skull and all that stuff. But what if it's the flip of that? That's the popular story, and I've highlighted that in many decodes, right? So it's written in the script for sure. But what if it's Uranus at the bottom, and you got to go down to get to the top?
Exactly. And you see, even when you look at the Uranus and ruling Aquarius, right? But in Vedic astrology, Aquarius is also linked to Rahu, right? Rahu, which is the north node of the moon. I'm sorry, we're getting into a little bit
that's fine. Let's
language for. So Rahu is the one ruling Aquarius, and in Kabbalah, in Vedas even, they specifically say that it's Rahu, the way to exit domination of the planets. So what is Rahu? And you see, so it takes you beyond the domination of planets, meaning beyond the domination of zodiac. Because I personally, based on the text that I have analyzed and what I have seen from the charts, I believe that in the astrology, in your chart, there are things to do with the matrix code, and these are the planets, the gods, the false gods, and something to do with your soul, something to do with also the exit out of here, some kind of voice that actually is trying to guide you here. However, the matrix is trying to get in the way. And to me, that voice is the Rahu Ketu. And look, what about marketing? Rahu Ketu have, for example, in Vedic astrology, they are considered to be malefics. They are considered to be energies to stay away from, because you are going to be guided astray. Well, to me, everything is upside down. Literally everything in this world is upside down. That's why it is a satanic world.
So you're a fan of believing that Rahu and Ketu and the north and south nodes of the moon are actually the way out, the kind of like the leaders in perhaps figuring out exiting the matrix is the Rahu Ketu axis.
Well, to me, maybe not so much to do specifically with the axis, but I would say that Rahu Ketu and their position are the information coming not from the matrix, but coming from you on some deeper level, on the soul level. So something that's actually not corrupted by the matrix. That's how I see them. However, according to the Kabbalah and Vedas, it's Rahu and Ketu, well, Rahu specifically, which is the way to surpass the influence of the planets.
So I love it, because so ladies and gentlemen, I just want to let all of you know that, see, Ola's chart in sidereal astrology, Babylonian astrology, her Rahu is in Gemini, right? I think it's Gemini, right? And
yes,
D1. Yeah. And Gemini to me is the prison bars. Okay, it is the 7th and 8th nakshatras, which will make up Cancer and Gemini, and these to me are linking to the air we breathe, nitrogen and oxygen, 7 and 8, and I think that is how we get into this game. Well, how do we get out of it? Do we? And she's got her Rahu in Gemini, so it's very fitting that you say you feel that Rahu and Ketu in this axis is actually the way out of here, and yours is in Gemini, which perhaps how we got in here, and how you get in the same way you get out the same way you get in, right?
Which is what we talked about, didn't we? Right. With the birth canal, we go through the darkness, not through the lights. It's interesting, huh?
So fascinating, man. Yeah. So there's something to your code. That's why I was fascinated when I saw your charts. And, again, big shout out to Rise Above podcast, those guys over in England, and Sam for bringing us together. Because again, I mean, Sam that's 314 in numerology, which is pi, and my last name's Pi. It's just crazy how you and I got connected, and we share the same commonalities. Our charts are flipped, we're 90 degrees apart from one another. It's just insane, ladies and gentlemen. If I showed you the chart side by side of me and Ola, it's like we were supposed to come together, perhaps to maybe to figure this out, right? And here we are talking about exiting the matrix, right? So
absolutely. Yeah.
Go ahead, Ola. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that just like you said, my Rahu is in Gemini. It's specifically in a nakshatra Arudra, which is it's a nakshatra of destruction, but not the bad destruction. It is basically getting rid of the old, so destroying the old and starting absolutely from scratch. And this is what I feel I've been really doing, including the astrology and including all this knowledge that we think we have so far. I mean, honestly, I've been destroying most of it and coming up with sort of new interpretation, because I feel that there's so much just lies and manipulation in what we have been told so far, that it needs to be rewritten. The truth needs to be pulled out of it. And right now it's a lot of layers of lies. And we had a session yesterday, right? Me and you looking at our charts, and like you say, they are so similar. But both of us, we have quite a lot of positively destructive energy in our charts. And there is a lot of, well, there's a tower from the tarot that is linked to very significant places, both for you and for me. There is the energy of the Arudra, so the destruction. There is the Bharani, which is the death, and again the womb. This is the symbol of the womb. Vishaka, which is the yoni, and again the symbol of the womb. So what is going on? Is there a destruction and a rebirth that we are meant to be working on here?
Yep. Well, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. Like before I even was introduced to you by Sam, just a few weeks ago. I mean, I've been on this venture of figuring out how to get out of what I call for fun now, the prison planet, which, if you're curious, like, what does that mean? Like, well, it means electromagnetism is what prison planet means. And that's exactly how this game works. It works off of magnetism and electricity, and then you have dielectricity as well. But why I'm on this venture of being the tour guide, why I incarnated, and I don't tell everybody a lot about my life because it's not about me. I just, thanks to one of my, I did a reading for somebody. Her name's Tiffany. With Tiffany, thanks for sharing your thoughts. She's like, you know what, Logan, you're a tour guide, and it kind of stuck with me, and then so that's what I've adopted now, and it made sense. And then I just looked at her and her readings, and I was like, wow, she was supposed to come into my life, tell me that's exactly what I was to take that title. And then I meet you, Ola, and it seems that you're a tour guide as well. And since we have very similar charts and we're both talking about exiting the matrix, I think there's just something to that, right? And, really, you got to make the truth your own, ladies and gentlemen. But like, if you're looking for the way out, if there is such a thing, I think a lot of things that Ola is saying here have a lot of merit. Like a lot of the things that are told to us have been flipped. Right. And, I think the game needs players. I think this reality needs players, and it needs a lot of them, because I feel like we live in a battery. This is a battery called life. It's a self-contained system, and it has a lot of energy going back and forth. But if you're somebody who really wants to exit the matrix, I would encourage you, I know Ola would as well, to start studying your charts, especially your sidereal, because then you get the micromanagers, the chakras. Not saying you shouldn't study Western, you could study both, but to study that, your numerology, your birthday, decoding your personality type, your Enneagram, your human design, as many layers as you can, because, where's your Rahu and Ketu? Where's your north and south node of the moon? These are important. What's fascinating about yours, Ola, is that your Rahu's in Ardra, right? Which is the 6th nakshatra. And people are like, well, what does that mean? Well, on September 11th, Rahu was in Ardra nakshatra. And it's in Gemini, the two twins. And what was knocked down? The two towers. And so what is it? Like, how does that correlate to exiting the matrix? A lot of energy was dispersed on that day. A lot of energy it went somewhere. Well, it was through that nakshatra in the sidereal astrology / Babylonian, and you have that as your Rahu placement, and there's something to that. That's why I value you as a human being in your incarnation. Talking about this topic.
It's just crazy. You see, you cannot call it coincidences. I mean, none of those things are coincidences. Why this happened in Narudra? What happened? Well, we had a total wipeout of the old paradigm, right? I mean, I think that for many people, that was the event which sort of woke them up to start seeing that something doesn't work. Is it really terrorism going on here, or is there something else, right? So I think that we really that was one of those events that opened up so destruction of the old paradigm and bringing something new, bringing the truth in. Interesting time, right? It just happened on the cusp, that the year 2000, right? So sort of that was the start of the new era of the truth coming out, perhaps. So
no doubt about that, for sure. I mean, and then of course now there's one single building in that location. To me, when you knock two down and you bring it into one, that means unification. That means the one world, this, one world that. And is that really just where this 3-dimensional reality is going? Like it or not, right? Like that's the collective, as Jason Bashir's from Archaic says. Big shout out to his channel, the collective. You're not going to change see, a lot of people out there, they want to go out fight, and they want to go protest and grab their foghorns and say what they got to. You think, now I'm not taking away from what you think your job is. If you feel like you're going to go be a voice out there, by all means, go do what you got to do. But if you're at the stage of the game like Ola and I are, like, I don't want to be bothered. I want peace in my life. I want to be surrounded by love and peace and beautiful surroundings, and not deal with nightmares, right? And is exiting the game, is that the way to get to that situation? Is that the true way to get to utopia? The you,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And if you look at the Christ, there's a lot of illustrations of him going like this and then pointing like this. What does this mean? Thank you, Joe Roland. This means in sign language, U. This is the letter U right here. This is what he does with his hand in a lot of the illustrations. And what is the letter U on the periodic table? Uranium. And what is uranium from? Uranus.
Yeah.
And what is Uranus? It's your anus. And it's that's the joke.
Yeah.
Your butthole, it may be the way out to get out of this game.
Yeah, and you know, if you sort of flip it onto the Kabbalah and the tree of life, Uranus ruling the Aquarius, the 11th house, and the number 11 on the tree of life, that which is the knowledge, wisdom.
There you go. And that's like the tree of knowledge has been demified, right? It's been you don't want to do that. You do not want to go there. That's like off limits. That's what the culture of the age of Pisces has brought to the world.
Yeah.
It's demonized knowledge. Well, in the age of Aquarius, it's now risen up. It's now the phoenix rising. It's the information age. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And Aquarius is one of the 4 fixed signs. If you look at a photon of light and you place it over the astrology chart, you will be left with the 4 fixed signs. Not part of the light now. They're part of the darkness. The photon will illuminate all but 4 signs: Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio. Those 4 signs will not be illuminated when you put the photon of light over the astrology chart in the 12 houses. So how about that? There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There's the darkness that we were talking about.
There's the darkness. Don't be afraid of the darkness. You see, don't be afraid of it. What we're being told is that the matter is being born from black holes, right? I mean, these are not light holes. These are black holes.
Great point. The black hole being the most powerful force in the universe.
Exactly. So what is it? What are we talking about here?
Yep.
So I would really, really strongly recommend to just to at least have a look and toy with that idea, and just, you know, when everybody's going one direction, I think perhaps the answers are actually the opposite.
The opposite. To exit the matrix. Go the opposite way. So we're getting to the tail end of this podcast here, and I want to keep it on track with exiting the matrix. So the prerequisites to perhaps getting on the path of getting off this wheel, this hamster wheel. Obviously, you and I being practitioners and fans of astrology and numerology and all the mystical arts, that would be something to start with, right? To study yourself, figure out your chart, figure out your code. What are the other things that we can kind of tell people? Because people are looking for kind of riding coattails here. What else do you think we need to do? What are some of the other prerequisites, do you think, Ola?
Well, I think I totally agree with you, because you see, people might be thinking, well, then if this is all coming from the matrix, why would I bother with a reading, right? I mean, if it's all predetermined, and why do I bother? Yeah. Well, you would bother because if we are in the ocean, then make the best out of it. Get yourself a surfboard and, you know, use the energies, because that's the best we can do. We probably cannot, at least not at this moment. I don't have the answer how to stop the influence of the matrix. So it is still there, and the charts are still working. Astrology is working. Numerology is working. I don't know how to escape that influence. So the best we can do is to squeeze the lemon, right, and make lemonade out of it. So that's why you would get a reading to understand in what way you can sort of utilize that potential, in what way you have been limited, so where are the traumas, how to overcome them. And I think that, well, what I have arrived at, you see, when you look at all the Eastern philosophies talking about you know, detachment, don't engage, don't worry, don't sort of go into the material things. Is that what it really says? Or perhaps the message is, do not engage with the matrix, do not engage with the signals being sent via your chart, meaning, you know, you have all these placements talking about, here you have a trauma, here you have some kind of limitation, here you're not good enough. Perhaps the idea is understand, where are those placements, where are those energies in which you are being triggered, in which you are being attacked and controlled by the matrix and do not respond, do not engage. So understand that there are no lessons. Perhaps this is what we need to take away from here. There are no lessons. If we are here caught into a game where we are a battery, then let's not try to make the suffering noble, calling it a lesson. Perhaps there is no lesson here. Perhaps we are just here, and let's just try to get out of here. Let's do not extend the game anymore.
Yeah. That's a good point, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're listening, I mean, to recap that, wow, not engaging. So, I mean, the essential aspects of getting a reading, like, you know, Ola, you do readings, right? Yeah, and if you resonate with Ola's, you know, personality and her viewpoints on stuff, hit her up for a reading. I'm going to leave all that in the description. So you just go down to the descriptions of the video. You can click on her website. You can book a reading through her. But, you know, maybe that's the key here is discovering your code, figuring out your trigger points, your traumas, and then when they start to show up in your life, you don't react to them as much, if at all. And you alleviate the burden of what's attached to you and you cut that cord. And if you do that over and over with practice, maybe that's one of the requisites that you need to check off the box to get out of here. I mean, I'm all about neutrality and not feeding Maya, right? Because that's the game needs players, and Maya, the great illusion will, I think it's just so funny because it's like, why do certain people show up in your life and they try to lure you back into Maya?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Lure you into Maya again.
And you see, you probably noticed that these people are not accidental. There are certain types of people. It's always, I mean, how many of us can say, I always meet the same type of guy? Yeah. Why is it the same type of guy? Well, because you're born with a Sun conjunct Saturn. It's going to be the same type of guy all over again, you know? Right. For example, in my case. So yeah, it is. And then of course you're gonna hear from all those psychologists and all those people sending you to therapy for years and years that, well, you know, you're unhealed and it's your issue and you have to work on that and you have to overcome that. Well, actually, this is what's written in your code, and that kind of guy will always show up. The best you can do is, first of all, realize that. For that to become fully conscious, do not engage. Do not go into lessons. Go into your talents. Go and follow your bliss. Go and follow why you're here. Yeah, no, those are good points. I mean, when I do my readings, I'm a big, you know, I focus on the Chiron, and the way I've been doing my readings with Chiron is I show people possibilities of what they're linked towards, and they're like, okay, well, what do I do with this? Because you want to heal that Chiron, and that's what you want to do, right? You want to alleviate the burden of what it's bringing to you, and how to sever that cord is sometimes you got to go back into your childhood, and I think that Chiron is linked to some event that happened when we were a child, maybe from a past life, perhaps. And then revisiting that event and telling your childlike self that it's okay. Like, hey, I'm from the future. I'm your future self. And it's okay. Like, that stuff is all bullshit. What you believed back then and those stories you made up as a kid, we're still, a lot of people are living like from a childlike state. They have things they've swept under the rug that happened to them. They were bullied, or they got beat up or abused, and they were victims, or they got raped, and then they carry that through as an adult. And it's horrible to live that way. And these are just tying you to back to the matrix. And I feel like, you know, I feel like ascension in that sense of leaving this game, is going to be tied to simplicity. So you got to get rid of complexity to alleviate. And what does complexity mean? Well, having all the gadgets and the cars and the boats and the houses, and it's all great to have those, but they tie you down. They tie you down, right? So, but there's a lot of people that they came here to experience the game to its full totality, and they would completely sit here and debate what we're all saying right here. Because they're like, my life's amazing and I have this and I have that, and they have the silver spoon, and maybe that's what they incarnated to experience, perhaps. But if you're here listening to this podcast and you like what Ola has to say, as well as myself, how do you exit the game? I think it's severing ties with the physical and the mental. And I think you're spot on, Ola, with that, like getting rid of the beliefs that we hold on to. I mean, I think ultimately this is how it plays out in this plane, right? It becomes our beliefs, our programming, etc. But if we look at it from the perspective of this being some kind of game, somebody having a great time watching us struggle down here, well, don't give them the entertainment.
Yeah.
Don't fall for it. But first, you obviously need to realize, and I think Chiron is a perfect position. It's one of those examples where the wound is really, really deep, and it's going to show up. It's going to dictate your life. It's going to dictate your choices. Even if you don't know that, it is happening. Quite a lot of people, they at some point start realizing, okay, I'm kind of making the same choices here. I'm choosing the same things. I'm meeting the same people. It must be some kind of something going on here, right? So they're starting to feel it, but they don't know what to do with it. And here is also where the sort of mindfulness and an ability to observe comes into play, right? Because those experiences, they will keep happening. They will keep showing up. Those people will keep showing up. But it is then up to you. Are you going to respond? Are you going to engage? What you going to do with it?
The big key word here today is respond, react. The word re means to do it again. So if you have a reaction to somebody coming into your life, it means you're doing it again. Re means doing it again. Reset, respond, reaction. So if someone or something shows up in your life and you're consciously in the now moment, you have the ability to perhaps say, I'm not going to engage. And that may be one of the requisites, the prerequisites of exiting the game, folks, is to not react or respond. And I struggle with this personally myself, you know, like my channel, I get trolls, I get just people that are just like, you know, they stick their stinger in me, man. And they want to push the buttons and see what kind of reaction. And I fall for it sometimes, you know, it's just my ego and my Mars placement and, you know, in Mula, you know, so, and I don't blame it on that. Again, this is my code. So it's like when I look at my chart and I see I got Mars and Mula, you know, well, I mean, that's, you know, that says it a lot, right? My God of war, when the circumstance shows up, where's your Mars place, ladies and gentlemen? When you have a certain circumstance show up, you're going to react based on war of where your Mars placement is at. And if you know that, then you may not do it again. You may be able to say, I'm not going to do that anymore. That may be one of the requisites to get out of this game, Ola.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is that part of leaving the ignorance, right? You become conscious. You become conscious on all sorts of levels. It's not just about being conscious of there's matrix, there is a game, there's something more here, but become fully conscious, you know, take that control, take power back into your hands from the matrix hands. In order to do that, you have to know your chart. You have to know the cards that you've been dealt with. You have to know your code. This is the decoding aspect of it. And once you know that, well, what you gonna do about it? What you gonna do with it? Are you gonna start using it? Are you going to use it in a way to stop engaging, right? That's the first step. And I would say that this is definitely the right way, because it's also going to probably give you quite a lot of time at the end, right? It's gonna leave you that time to start studying a little bit more, because you sort of step out from engaging in unnecessary relationships, in unnecessary situations. So you start living from a totally different principles.
Yeah. I mean, even in the, you know, when you go study the monks, they shave their head. The whole point of that is to get rid of all the ego. And the ego is what responds, reacts, you know, redoes. I mean, so when you want to reach a state of nirvana means pure again. That's what nirvana means. It means purity. And purity comes from alleviating beliefs, ideas, concepts, reactions to the world around you. So when you live in a state of bliss, you're not going to be susceptible to temptations, which will lure you back into the matrix. You'll not respond to people like kind of pushing your buttons. It's challenging being a content creator, like myself, putting content out there. I mean, several times I'm like, I'm just going to shut the comments off. And people, you know, I get people, don't shut them off. And, you know, it would alleviate any kind of anybody just being a troll or just being a total ass. You know, and that's what some people are. That's what they're designed to do. They're designed to just push your buttons. That's what they came into your life for. There are actually people out there that incarnated. They're never going to level up. They're just designed to just be total asses. That's it. Right. That's how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is also this theory that actually says, based on research that was done, the same time of experiment was run in the 60s and then in the 90s and just recently, which basically, just without sort of unnecessary talking too much about that, the takeaway from that experiment suggests that perhaps out of all the people, or so we call them people, there is only about 10 to 15% that are real or possess a soul element or a soul. The rest are just some kind of background noise.
Extras in the movie, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is quite an interesting theory, right? And would that also mean that are only the real ones awakening? The other ones will never awaken?
Yeah. I mean, and again, ladies and gentlemen, if you're here, you're supposed to be here. There are no accidents. What are you going to do with this information? Not saying I'm right. Not saying Ola's right. I mean, we feel like we're right. Everybody thinks they're right. Everybody living, this is one of the great awakenings of my life. I don't know about you, Ola, but like I went and did this course called Landmark, which is a worldwide company, and big shout out to that company. I've been 3 times, and they say, Werner Erhard, the founder, he says, everybody's right. And I'm like, I thought about it, like, wow, that is true. Everybody is right. Because you think, or whoever's listening right now, you think you're right in what you do. Because if you didn't think so, you wouldn't be doing it. Right. So, so don't listen to what I'm saying. Don't listen to what Ola's saying. Do your own research and homework. Study your charts. Get a reading if you can swing it. I mean, I got a course coming out. Ola, you got a course coming out. Ola does readings. Go to her website. It's going to be in the description and link. Get a reading from Ola. She's very good at Babylonian astrology, which is, to me, is the closest to the source. And know your nakshakras, know your Rahu, your node placements, know your blueprint, folks. That the age of Aquarius, there are no excuses anymore.
No.
You're in the I know thyself age, or at least we're moving it. Because Ola, you don't think we're in the age of Aquarius yet, right?
Well, I think that we can get into the technicalities of it. If we look at the position of the sun at the vernal equinox, we are entering, we're at the gates to the age of Aquarius. However, I would, looking around and feeling what's been happening in the last decades, I think that we cannot deny that the energy is already here. So the sort of transitions between these eras, these are not the sort of cut-off point, right? It doesn't happen like that. Those energies, they sort of overlap each other. So that's why you still have people who are still believing science, and then you have those who absolutely do not follow any level of authority. This is Aquarius versus Pisces. I believe science, but what would you really believe? You believe pharmaceutical concerns, right? That are so-called science. And then you have the other people that are questioning everything. That's Aquarius.
Yeah, for sure.
So you have an overlap already.
Yeah, it's so crazy, the synchronicities right now, because if you're a fan of the sidereal astrology and the nakshatras like we are, the nakshatra that corresponds to Pisces moving into Aquarius is nakshatra number 24. Here's my air-conditioned remote control. Look at the number on there, Ola. This is what it's set on right now. And then the card that I just flipped over is the 24th card in the deck. And we're just talking about the transition period. And no accidents here. This Jack represents the transition from Pisces to Aquarius. This is what the card of the transition means. This is the Knight of Wands in the tarot. And the Knight of Wands is on a horse. It's in full battle gear. It's moving forward into what you believe, what you're going to adopt as your beliefs, and not taking any bullshit. This is the mental Jack, the mind, the Jack of clubs, card 24 hours in a day. And this nakshatra is the transition of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, and perhaps how to exit this game, the Matrix. Yeah. So,
Well, I think if there ever was a time to find that out, I think the age of Aquarius and the energy of the Aquarius definitely is bringing that potential.
I totally concur with you without a shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. So, well, I think that's kind of a wrap. We've been going a little bit over an hour. I want to keep it a little bit on the shorter side. So, I just really greatly appreciate. I'm in a very great state of gratitude for coming on and joining forces with me today. I know we've talked already, but being able to come on here and talk about this concept of exiting the matrix, sharing your knowledge and wisdom, allowing me to ramble on and doing what I do, coming together. This has been a real fun, a fun hour plus that we've had to do this. Any kind of parting words that you want to share? I'm going to put all your information in the description for people to click on and find your website, so you don't have to state any of that stuff. But anything you want to talk about before we kind of end this transmission?
I would say that I think that anybody listening to this, you probably have that natural default feeling for freedom and independence in the heart inside of you, and that probably applies to absolutely everything in your life. And I think that the greatest victory of this game is to fall from this world a free man. Let's keep looking.
Free Ola, yeah. So I have this joke. Free,
that is true.
You're a free Mason. True. Yeah, I used to have a brick background, and they're like, Logan's a Mason. They thought I was a Mason. I'm like, no, I'm a free Logan. And that was the joke. So now you're a free Ola.
I am indeed free Ola, more than you think, because my surname in Polish means free.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So there you go. There's another gem drop right there. That's amazing. That's awesome.
That's what it is.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. So we had the kitty in the beginning, and he was Tigris, or cat, was blowing his horn in the very beginning, which is awesome. But Ola, it's been an honor and a pleasure. I know we're going to probably do another podcast because this is such a grand topic. So ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us on this topic of exiting the matrix. I hope we come back and do it again, maybe part 2 or something else. I know we will, but anyway, that's a wrap for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. Please go to Ola's channel. I'm going to leave it in the description. If you resonate with her, book a reading with her. She's very reasonable on her readings. How long are your readings? Like an hour and a half? Something like that?
Yeah, right now I have 2 types of readings. One is 1 hour, so that's kind of a more compact version, and there's a 2-hour reading as well available where we go much deeper.
And I bet you go past 2 hours too, like I do.
That is true. That's
a typical sign of somebody who really enjoys their craft. Somebody who doesn't have a timer and the bell going off and saying, I gotta go, a person who enjoys their craft. So ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Click on the link in the description, follow Ola and her website. What is the name of your website, just so people can know? Maybe you can.
You can find me on www.selfmasteryquest.com.
Selfmasteryquest.com. It'll be in the description.
Typical Arudra.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And are you on Facebook? And are you on any social media?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I'm actually not that big on social media other than Facebook. So Facebook Self Mastery Quest, Ola Wolny as well.
Cool. I'll leave that in the link as well. So awesome. All right, Ola. Well, I know you're getting polarized up there in the Arctic.
I'm getting polarized up here. Yes.
It's not fully dark at nighttime, is it now, or is it?
Well, it is. I think we have sort of gotten to a point where it is getting dark. So unfortunately, no more polar day here. But yeah, I think maybe we can short nights.
I think we can maybe talk about that next time, because ladies and gentlemen, we were talking about this yesterday, her and I, about the sun's position and where it's at up in the Arctic, because they get 24 hours of light, 24 hours of darkness. And Ola was telling me that the sun's position has moved, and it was very noticeable up there. And this is fascinating, all with the changing of the guards coming. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap. Until next time, Logan from Decode Your Reality, Ola from the
Self-Mastery Quest.
The Self-Mastery Quest and the great country of Norway in the Arctic. Till next time, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you later.
Thank you so much, and bye-bye.